Oh, this is annoying. I don't have a background. This is frustrating. Oh, this is very frustrating. I don't have a background to debate with. So I'm sorry. Let me see if I can do this a little bit. Hold on. That guy was. That was good that he was willing to talk it out. I don't really understand why he was so unwilling to admit that he is stretching. Understand why he was so unwilling to admit that he is stretching the evidence. It's okay to stretch the evidence. Stretching the evidence is not necessarily a bad thing, but you should always acknowledge when you're doing it. What's up, Tater? What's your thought?
Hi. uh, actually, it's nice hearing a debate without, people going nuts. Free Karen Reed, first off, she's factually innocent. There's no way that she hit John with her car. I mean, you don't have to believe in physics to see. I mean, first off, the scratches on his arm, like if the taillight had hit his arm, you would expect to find taillight embedded in his arm, not just in his clothes. Taillight doesn't grow legs and crawl out of people's arm, you know.
Injuries make absolutely no sense. They're not consistent with. There's literally nothing about his injuries that's consistent with the prosecution's evidence.
A
And
hundred
so,
percent.
everyone who may not know the case, I will be doing a deeper dive into this because it's fascinating. But basically, what they allege is that Karen Reed got into this car, drove forward, must have driven forward first, and then drove backwards 60 feet at 25 miles an hour, perfectly clipped her boyfriend, which clipped him on his arm using the rear taillight, which then caused him to soar in the air 30 feet, do a spin, land perfectly on his back with his hands by his side and his legs perfectly laid out as if he'd lay down to go to sleep. And all
Correct.
of the glass from the taillight flew 30 feet in the air and followed him, and not a single piece of it went under him or above him,
Right.
but went all around him and left him with injuries where he had no bruises on his body from the neck down, no contusions from the
Also,
neck down, no broken bones
it's
from the neck
important
down.
it's important to know that they did not find taillight that day
They did find
until
it, yeah, they did find it that day. It was
right.
just after 5 p.m.
So not only did he do all that crazy stuff, makes no sense. There was no taillight in his arm. They also did not find red taillight. And I don't think it's really been put out. I know they always talk about it snowing, but it was not snowing that hard when everybody left. It was barely snowing. Have you seen the videos of Karen driving by the library?
Yeah, it was barely snow.
And it was barely snowing. There is zero chance that nobody driving that direction would not have saw him or heard a man get hit by a car.
Yeah, literally makes no sense at all. Fully agree.
Like if you
Eh,
have, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, if someone in my server could create a background that just says Karen Reed, has a photo of her, maybe the property, it may help things. Lions, what's your opinion?
Hey, what's up? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm sitting in my car. I'm not driving, but I'm just sitting in my car. Uh, no, I agree with you. I was just listening on the last live. I guess I do have one question though. Why doesn't the 227 search pique your interest?
It piques my interest, but I know about Celebrite. I know about cell phone extractions. I have experience with them, and I know enough about it that I know that data that is extracted can be both A, misleading on its own, but B, very easily mischaracterized which is why getting a very good expert who explains the data is critical. And I have not seen a expert speak on the issue to the degree where I feel confident that they're interpreting it correctly. That's why.
See,
So
I agree with that. I do think it's suspicious that she did, I believe she did, but I don't know if they can prove 100% unless they bring in somebody from Google that says, hey, she Googled at 2:27 this. And I think they do have a Google guy on the witness list, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't know.
Yeah, I doubt. I think that if you have her googling that, I think you have Jen McCabe, right? I think there's no question about that, right? But the reason why I don't focus on it is that I don't think it's the strongest evidence because it's not indisputable, which is weird to
Right.
me, by the way. I am confused why it is they have not spent more money on a better expert to put that to rest. That's frustrating to me, but it's just not necessary. There's so many other things that is weird to me. Like, even though if she did it at 6 a.m., I have to ask myself, why did her and what is the friend who drove Jen McCabe and
Carrie
Karen
Roberts.
Reed?
Yeah,
Carrie
Carrie
Roberts.
Roberts.
Why did Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts have to create a timeline? And even if they did make a timeline, why did Jen McCabe even tell Carrie Roberts that, hey, by the way, I want you to know Karen told me to Google this? Because what's ultimately
Yeah.
sus about that? Why would you have made that a point? And then why would Carrie Roberts, let's even say unintentionally, misrepresent the fact that she didn't actually hear Karen say that? A lot of that is just so suspicious on its own that I
So
don't necessarily need proof that I don't need proof that she did it at 2:27. I think there's enough around that alone that already is sus to me.
so I saw something interesting the other day about the whole Google search thing. Why did Carrie Roberts tell the grand because the Google search didn't come out until like 2023 at the whole 227 thing. So why in 2022 at the grand jury are they talking about the Google search like it's some sort of
Big
they
deal.
need to explain it away then? Why
Yep.
were they trying to explain it away then when nobody knew about it for a whole another year?
Yeah,
They
exactly.
knew
I agree.
they knew it was going to be an issue. Let's
But
remember that
why? See,
Jim McCabe's
that's what tells me that it happened at 227. Is because they
Jim
were already trying to explain it away.
correct. But Jim McCabe's husband is in data and electronics. So they also Garino, right? They knew because it popped up on Celebrate, and they were able, because obviously this is how this case goes, is the witnesses, air quotes, witnesses are in contact with the DA and the police, and they get to know all this information behind the scenes because they're so innocent they have to be involved in this. So they knew ahead of time that it was going to get brought up eventually, just like every single thing you see. Like anytime the defense has come out with something, then in the trial they have an excuse for it. It's because they know what's going on, because Morrissey and now Brennan are all in the background having conversations with these people, sending emails, sending text messages, talking on the phone, having secret meetings in cemeteries and stuff. So they know all this already. They already know what's going to happen. They know what the defense is going to ask before the defense asks it, because they're
Well,
colluding behind the scenes.
I don't even think you have to go that far, though. I mean, this judge has completely ruined the defense by making them have to turn over impeachment evidence before trial. That's insane. That doesn't
Yeah.
happen anywhere else in any trial in this
That it is
country.
very unusual.
That is
I
insane.
I try to avoid a lot of the conspiracy theories because the more a conspiracy you have to find, the less likely there actually is a conspiracy theory, right? So the
I
Judge
agree with you
Bev
there.
thing, I think Judge Bev is a really crappy judge, and I think it's that simple. I don't think it's any more complicated than her being a really crappy judge. And there's lots of really crappy judges.
I agree. I also think that she really just does not like the defense either. So,
Well, I
um,
don't think she likes Alan Jackson in
oh,
particular.
for
I agree. And
sure.
Alan Jackson is not a likable person, to be very clear.
Yeah, he's brash.
Yeah, exactly. He is a unlikable lawyer if you were a judge. And so, like, her not liking him, I don't think is sus either. I think it's actually very understandable.
Right, but I think also as a judge, you should put that aside and just
100%.
try the
Correct.
case. But you know, we all know we're humans, so
Yeah, again, I just try to avoid all these ideas that everyone's in on it because I'll be honest, one of the reasons why you guys are able to say that she's innocent, I'm not able to say she's innocent. I'm able to say that there's enough reasonable doubt that there's no way that I would say she's guilty. I think
well,
that's crazy.
Irish,
Um,
can I run something by you?
yeah, go for it.
So I watch a lot of cases. You know, it's kind of like my hobby or whatever you want to call it. Not a lawyer, nothing like that. But so you know, it's innocent until proven guilty, right?
Yeah,
So if you're never proven guilty, aren't you just innocent?
I don't think so. O.J. Simpson was
Oh,
found not
trust me,
guilty.
I get that too. But we use not guilty, I think, in court because innocent puts too much of a burden on the defendant to be innocent. But if the saying is innocent until proven guilty, if you're never proven guilty, you are innocent.
No, so I think that there's a difference. The idea of innocent until proven guilty, I think it's very dangerous that people don't understand this distinction. The idea of innocent until proven guilty, that is specifically a legal concept. That only applies when we're talking about putting someone in jail. The only reason we have that term, it's not to imply social judgment because we judge people guilty all the time. What we're saying when we say innocent until proven guilty is the government cannot put us behind jail or unalive us unless we're proven guilty. But that doesn't mean that there's this horrible thing in my opinion that people say the idea of innocent until proven guilty socially. No, that innocent until proven guilty is all about creating a burden that the government has to satisfy before the government can hurt you. So just because the government fails to meet that burden does not mean that we as a society should agree with the outcome of a case. I don't agree with that at all. I think there's plenty of times when someone is obviously guilty, but they're found not guilty.
Correct. I agree with that. I think one innocent person behind bars is probably the most agree. When you take somebody's life, that's 100%. Like, that's serious.
Well, yeah, that's why I don't agree with the death penalty.
But when it comes to this case, it was so fumbled from within 16 hours of John O'Keefe being found. It was so jumbled that there will never, I don't want to say there will never be, but the likeliness of anybody else being charged is slim to none.
It's not happening. Yeah, 100% it's not
And
happening.
while I believe that she is 100% innocent, because, there's things that aren't in court that I know are
Well, what are they?
true, and then people that watch the case might find, obviously it's all reasonable doubt. A lot of things are reasonable doubt. Like even some of Karen's arguments are reasonable doubt, right? In favorable of the state or the Commonwealth, whatever. But I just think I don't know. It's really hard to, like, I really just know she did not do that. There's just,
Yep.
to me, the biggest thing is nobody saw him lying there.
That's huge.
That yard is not big enough for him to have been back, or he wasn't, first off, he was only feet from the curb. Okay. So and it wasn't snowing that hard, and there wasn't snow on the ground, as much snow on the ground as it was when they later found him. There is zero chance that nobody saw him until Julie Nagel came out of nowhere and said she saw a black blob on the ground. How disrespectful. But anyways, that's
Yeah.
beyond the point.
Yeah. No,
But
I strongly agree. You can't have that many people driving by and claim to have seen nothing when his body would have been very visible.
Right.
when they were all leaving. He like would have been insanely visible.
I think this is where the defense gets in trouble, though. I mean, this case is so much simpler than all this. It's the injuries just do not match up with being hit by a car. I mean, plain simple. I mean,
I
he has
can't
no
figure out.
broken,
I just can't. Yeah.
no broken bones, no bruises. I mean, they just seem to make it that case, and they win.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I think. Look, there's simplicity is important, but because the job of the defense is to not find innocence, their job is to poke holes in everything. So I don't think they're wrong for focusing on 100 things at once. I think that's kind of what they have to do. And they have to focus on all these other things. But I agree with you. The injuries
Right, but
alone should be sufficient. But that said, like the reason why I don't say she's innocent is the conspiracy allegation is crazy. When you really map it out, the number of people involved, how poorly this was orchestrated, given the fact that there were cops, it is a crazy, insane theory to believe. And so that's why, like, I'm not necessarily saying that they're wrong. It's possible that she did it. I just think that there's not enough evidence. Because walk me through your theory as to how it actually happened then. And I think
so
it's going to be really hard for you to do that without sounding insane.
no. So I think it's actually way simpler than what you think. So
Go for it.
I don't think there has to be this huge like 10, 20, 30 people in on the
So
conspiracy,
who's in?
right?
So who's in on it? Who's
So
in on it, and who did it?
so I think he went inside the house. I think he got beat up, and
Okay,
then they
which
put him on.
house? Which door? Did he go through the main door or the side door?
Well, why does that matter?
It matters because if he goes through the main door, everyone sees him. If he goes through the side door, maybe not.
That's a point. Before you continue, I'd like to just make clear. We say side door as if it's like on the side of the house. It is not on the side of the house. It is in front of the house, along with the front door. In your picture, you see the two windows. If you go in that cut right next to the garage is the side door. So that's been an issue that Karen Reed has brought up. People always say, oh, well, she said he went to the side door. Well, technically, the side door is in front of the house.
Yeah, it's just like the garage door, right?
Kind
Basically.
of, yeah. It's hard to
No,
explain.
you don't have to explain it. I've been working on an image.
I
There
thought
we
that
go.
might be what you were putting up.
Yeah, it's taking me a bit of time. So let me just drop you
You're good.
guys lower. So if
Yep.
you guys look here, this is 34 Fairview. That is
So
her car.
where's the
And
kitchen?
so the kitchen is, if you look where the blue number one is, that
Yep,
is technically the front door. The kitchen is, if you open up that
to the
door
right.
directly, no, I think it's directly ahead of you.
It's directly. If I'm mistaken, I believe that the formal living room, whatever you want to call it, is on the. I could be wrong. I could be mixing this up. Is on the right when you walk in, and then when you walk in further, the left is the door to the basement,
So
and then you go straight into the house, and that's the kitchen. When you keep walking back.
what was the window right there in the middle between 1 and 2? The picture's gone, but that's okay.
No, I think that's the formal.
Sorry. So, well, I mean, I know what this is. So, uh, let me
That
just
window right to the right of that shrub, like the taller tree between 1 and 2. What's that? Do we know what room that is?
hang on. Let me pull it up.
I guess I'm just trying to figure out, like, if he came in 2 or 1, I would he be seen either way? I think he'd have to be seen, right?
He would definitely be seen
If he
on
went
the
into
front door.
one,
Yeah, the
right?
front door
Well, that
goes in. Go ahead.
that's also if they're all telling the truth and they are all sitting in the kitchen. What if they're not all sitting in
Right.
the kitchen? Then none of them know he's there.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
But I guess my point is that it wouldn't take much, especially with Jen McCabe, telling Carrie Robertson. Carrie Roberts just has to believe Jen McCabe. She doesn't have to know anything's true, false, anything. She can just believe what Jen McCabe's telling her. Jen
Correct.
McKay, Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, Colin Albert. I mean, they're all in on it. Yes, 4 or 5 people, but everybody just believed them from the get go. Trooper Proctor just believed them. Never looked into anything. Oh, nothing happened inside the house. They never went in. No, they didn't even go in and look. That's not
I
how
do agree
investigations
that
work.
I do agree that that is a major, major problem as well.
Like
Also,
just because a criminal tells you no, I don't have drugs on me, that doesn't mean that they don't have drugs on them. Like cops aren't trained to just believe you at your word ever, except for in this case. And that's also what troubles me with the 227 Google searches. You'll watch so many trials, and the state will put in Celebrate evidence, and it's never wrong until this trial. Now Celebrate evidence is wrong. This is the only time I've ever seen this argued in court by a state prosecutor that Celebrate evidence of a deleted search on a phone is wrong.
So I will say this. That's part of the reason why I am not taking the Celebrite data very seriously, is only because of the fact that you don't hear that argued a lot. And so I suspect what's happening is the defense is, again, really just trying to throw any sort of shit they can at this point. And that the Celebrite data is probably accurate. And that's why it's become an unusual point of contention, that they're just trying to muddy the waters. And that's why I think it's happening. So, I know you're saying that suggests the prosecution is wrong. It may suggest the defense is overstretching.
Well,
um,
I mean, they just had another big time murder case in that same courthouse. And the same DA's office argued that Celebrate evidence was right. All this stuff. I mean, this never gets argued in court. It is wholly just not in good faith that they're arguing it this way.
But I just want to be super clear. There is a very big distinction between arguing the Celebrite data is not right versus what they're arguing is the Celebrite data is not being accurately interpreted. Those are two
right.
very, very different arguments.
But see, that's also like, it's like, you were talking about the conspiracy. It's way easier if you understand what Canton is like and how incestuous it is. This group of people in Canton rule the roost. Like, they are the head honchos in that town, and what they say goes. That's fact. Um,
I agree with
so
you, but sorry, finish your theory. Who did it? Because I interrupted you. Who did it?
oh yeah,
And
yeah.
who had to know about it? And let's talk about that.
Me or
Either
Lions?
of you.
Oh, okay. I'll
I
tell
can
you
tell you.
my
Go on.
theory.
Go ahead, Tater.
I don't think it was planned, in the sense of, I don't think that they were planning to murder him. I don't know who did what or whatever. I truly believe that it was an accident. Probably. I mean, were they fighting? Would you consider it an accident if they were fighting? It's, up for debate, but I would consider that they were fighting, and that he probably fell back and hit his head. And like
Okay, and
everybody
who
else
saw
saw.
it?
I don't think everybody in the house saw it, honestly. I think it was, now that's where it gets tricky, because I don't know who actually saw it. I would, obviously, Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, and everybody says Colin Albert, but I don't even have anything to say about him, even though I do believe was part of it, but maybe not on the part that everybody gives him. But I will say that at least Brian Albert and Brian Higgins were fighting, because you saw in the video at the waterfall bar, Chris Albert holding Brian Higgins back, and he was pointing, and Brian Higgins was pointing at somebody, which we assumed was John, and in an aggressive manner. So I do think it was an accident, and then they just covered up for self-preservation, because like, when a cop dies, like, this is also another issue that I have. I'm from Florida. We have a sheriff that is notorious always. Like, a guy killed a canine and shot an officer, and they toured the county looking for him. And they found him, and they shot him 63 times. And when the media asked him why they shot him 63 times. He said they ran out of bullets.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, if a cop is dead on the lawn, why is no other cop anywhere not being like, hey, this is an issue. Why aren't we, doing something about this? Like, we need to be shutting down town right now. I don't care if it's a blizzard. It's a cop. It's not like a civilian. They would be,
Okay,
it
but
just doesn't
part
matter.
of the issue is that if we believe her testimony, he is inside the house for several minutes, 5+
Mhm.
minutes. And I think if you look at this layout here, if he went into number one, that's the foyer, right? It's possible he doesn't get past the foyer. If he does, it's a deadline into the kitchen. Now, you've been at house parties. Someone's in the kitchen. You've been at
Right.
house parties. Someone in the kitchen is going to see John walk in. You've been to house parties. That person is going to shout, "Hey, John," which now means everyone is in on the conspiracy. And
Well,
she
that's
said he walked into that door, but I don't believe her. I don't believe her because of the tinted windows. She would have been looking backwards through tinted windows and guessing that he walked through that door. So I don't necessarily believe he walked through that door. If he walked through the other door, he's in the living room. And that means that some sort of fight happens in that living room. The other option is maybe he does get into the foyer. And if you notice the staircase goes directly down to the exercise room.
right. See, that's where
So
I think that like, Jim McCabe's daughter slipped on stand, and when she was talking about Colin Albert being in the house, she said Colin was not there when John was.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
So I believe that there could have been people that saw her or saw him in the house and said nothing about it. But also remember, Chloe was an aggressive dog, and Brian Albert testified that she was not good with strangers. So, could she have maybe attacked him and he fell back? You know,
But you're not
um,
gonna
that's
households not gonna hear a dog attack?
well, that's where I think the household did hear it,
Okay,
and
so
that
then that means that the number of people lying from your standpoint is a large number.
yes, absolutely, 100%. So,
That's where it gets more dodgy. So what you're saying is that within a few minutes of entering, there's a fight. It's not planned. It's either Brian or it's Colin. The dog gets involved. Now notice that yes, he had a bruised eye, which could be a punch. We agree.
right,
But he doesn't have multiple punches. He
right,
doesn't have anything on his body whatsoever, right? And
right,
so we know that it was if there was a punch, it was quick. It was a couple of
right,
punches. And I
right.
think you're
I agree.
assuming he fell back and hit something, cracked his head open, and
Yeah.
became non responsive, right?
Yeah, I don't think they intentionally, in my opinion, I don't think that they intentionally killed him.
Yeah. So accidentally they unalive him. However, am I wrong in saying that it's never been concluded, or rather, let me rephrase that. Has it not been concluded that he did ultimately die from hypothermia, meaning the injury didn't unalive him?
Well,
that's what
see
they
that
said in the first trial, but the defense has come out saying he didn't have any frostbite.
right. And the defense also said that his wound to his head was automatically disabled him. He couldn't walk,
Incapacitated.
talk, move. So I don't know about that because I haven't seen their testimony yet, so I can't really speak to that. I know that there was liver damage. I know that being a factor, and liver, or maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong about the liver damage. Some organ damage that that's part of hypothermia. But also you got to remember John was also a heavy drinker. So could that liver damage be from him drinking a lot, or was it hypothermia? I don't know. I don't think everybody saw him. That's the problem. It was a party. There was music playing, right? And if it was an accident, right? And somebody punched him, the dog immediately attacked him, and he fell back and hit his head. that could happen in seconds, and that doesn't have to be loud. And remember, we think it was in the basement, so nobody was in the basement. According, well, I don't know. They
Well,
said they
we
weren't in the
agree
basement. You know what
that
I'm saying?
part of the framing that makes the cover up slash conspiracy sound insane is that their way of getting rid of this was to blame Karen Reed. And we do know that if there was a conspiracy, Jen McCabe was involved. And the reason we know that is because Jen McCabe's the one who testified that his body was found exactly where Karen's car was. And
Right.
therefore, Jen could have been the only one to tell whoever unalived him where to leave the body, right? I think we would agree with. Do you agree with that?
Well, she was working from the jump on these people, including John's mom. She was behind the scenes getting the story out there, and and this is where I don't think that some people are lying as much as, well, they believe her because she's never lied to them, or she's the soccer mom. There's no reason for her to lie. So they've put more faith in her, and if she says he wasn't in the house, then even though I was in the house and something seems off, I believe her, because it's a lot. That group of people, like, you want to be on the ends with them, you don't want to be on the outs with them. And then also, I don't think that their plan was to blame Karen Reed to begin with. I think that it just happened to be that she was an easy target.
Well, no, I disagree there because if we think she was unalived, there's no way they're putting him outside the house without trying to frame Karen Reed. There's no
No,
way.
I disagree
Well,
with that.
Why
I
would you put
disagree
him
with that.
wasn't there
outside?
wasn't
Hold on.
there
No, they put him outside. I think the original plan was they were going to blame that he got hit by a plow.
correct? Because
So-
isn't
That was
that in
their
that
original plan. And then things kind of morphed, and then they realized they could put it on Karen, and that's where they've settled. And it was much easier. It was much easier to put it on Karen because they could be like, oh, they were fighting, they were arguing, she hit him. I mean,
and
that's a much
also
easier story to sell somebody than getting hit by a plow. But I think their original plan was, hey, we'll put him right here by the curb or close to the road. Say he got hit by, then they'll conclude he got hit by a plow.
right. But also remember, Lucky Loughran's brother is on the board, Canton Select Board too.
Yeah.
So they have reason to also not blame him either. But I don't know. I think it's so hard. I don't think it's much deeper because it's really the Massachusetts State Police are really, really, really corrupt. And until I saw it, I wouldn't believe that many police officers could do.
I'm not
Be
in any way surprised the police officers are lying. It's the
right.
non-police officers.
I understand that.
Wait, but
Like the Nagel, like Ryan Nagel.
yeah, I know, but they're
Right.
good friends with people that are high in power. I mean, in that city. I mean, Chris Albert sits on the board. Calvin Albert is in the police department. I mean,
I hear you. I just generally am against the idea of conspiracies because conspiracies fall apart very, very, very easily.
Maybe not conspiracy is not a good word for it. Maybe corruption is. Maybe that's the word. It's just
Just to be clear, though, we don't need a big conspiracy. There is probably a way to
right.
explain it where there's not a big conspiracy. That's why I'm anti-conspiracy, and I believe that it could probably be explained with a very small conspiracy. I do believe
well,
that
what do you consider small?
Sure, maybe 3 people.
Okay, because I was going to say this might be upwards of 10.
Yeah, that's
that still small?
that's a big secret to keep amongst 10 people. That's a huge, huge secret to keep amongst 10 people. You're talking about covering for a murder. You got 10 people
Right.
to agree to lie to cover for a murder. That's
Yeah,
a
but
huge leap of faith.
Most
I don't
are
think
family.
Okay, sure. Most are family.
I
I
think
don't
that
think
more
sorry.
people would cover up for their family than anything.
I don't think that everybody is necessarily lying in the house. That's not like, I think there are people that know what happened. I don't think anybody knew what was happening when it happened. Because I don't believe it was, I think it was very quick. I think he got in the house and immediately it happened. You know what I'm saying? I don't know where she said the side door. I don't know if he got to the downstairs first or down to the basement for see, that's where it's all. But I do know that people may be suspicious. They didn't see anything, so they can't say, "Hey, I saw this and that." You know.
Tater, I agree with you, but I do on Irish's point though. I mean, all these people are really they have dug into the stance of he never went in that house, so they would
Not the
have to
two.
be lying at this point. The Nagels, all of them are so dug in on that side. They would
Right.
have to be lying at this point. They would know the truth.
But there were two other kids in the house for Brian Albert Jr.'s party, right? Weren't there two other girls? And they didn't see anything either. So that's why I'm thinking like maybe he did just slide in and went straight to the basement and it happened, or I just don't think that it's that implausible for something to happen so quickly and nobody to know about it.
Let me ask you this question. It was a theory I had that I've not bothered exploring, but Kevin Higgins, do we have absolute confirmation for when it is he left the house?
Well, they have him on
Camera at 1:30.
camera at like 1:20 at the Canton Police Station.
Yeah,
so
that's
he
it,
left
right?
before then.
So we know, what's his name again? Brian Higgins on the right, right?
Brian Higgins.
So to everyone who doesn't know this, Karen Reed on the left was dating for 2 years John O'Keefe, the person who was unalived.
Correct.
We also know that Brian on the right was trying to get into Karen's panties.
Facts.
Very recently.
But she also is important to know too that she was entertaining it too. So
Facts.
in that situation,
I'm not slut shaming him. I'm describing motive.
Right.
Describe the story.
Yeah, we also know that the night of this all happening, Brian Higgins sent text messages to Karen, and Karen didn't respond, which would have left him feeling somewhat emasculated. The thing that always stood out to me is that it makes the most sense from my standpoint that he or Colin are the ones who got in the fight. Let's assume it was him. One thing that
John or Higgins?
Higgins.
Higgins fought John.
Yeah, well, let's assume Higgins was the one who went alive, John. One thing that I always found interesting is that those marks on John, I don't think they're dog bites. I don't think they're dog scratches. I don't. They could be, but I don't think they are. And I also don't think they were made by a taillight. I'm certain they were not made by a taillight, but I don't think they're dog bites.
Can I ask you what you think they are?
I think they're highly consistent with a plow. And what has always kind of, I don't know why I've just not heard this theory talked about is that you guys look at where the red is right now, right? The red is right there. And I want you to imagine that where the red is, that is where John O'Keefe's body was found.
Well, we don't even know where it was found.
No, we do. You're able to see his body. You're able to see Karen Reed given CPR as the cop car pulls up.
Right.
I'm just saying that because they never took a picture of where he was, which is mind-blowing. But
which is why I watched the police tape over and over again until I could see Karen Reed. That's why the X is just below the pole. But what could make sense to me is that John gets out of the car and that John doesn't walk across the snow. Not everyone wants to walk on snow. Not everyone wants to walk across. So maybe he didn't. Just hear me out. And maybe Brian Higgins left right at the same time. The thing that always stood out to me is Brian Higgins was parked. Do you all see where the mailbox is on the far right-hand side?
Yep.
Brian Higgins was parked there, and what nobody talks about is Brian Higgins had a plow on the front of his Jeep.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I don't understand how is that not a very genuine theory that he may have raised his plow and clipped John as he's driving away.
Well,
And it could have
his
been totally
testimony.
accidental.
Well, hold on though.
To be clear, hold
I do
on.
have to take this back though. Hold on, we have to take this back though. The injuries still do not match getting hit by a car. Any
Right.
car.
Right. But
So
no,
that's where that one falls apart too.
Well, hang on. No. I never
Can I-
said the injuries would not be explained by a plow. I said they're not explained by a car. If you're telling me he got hit by a metal plow, that would not be crazy to me.
Yeah, but you would most definitely break a bone. If you got hit in
he
the
did.
arm,
He fractured his head, right?
well, if you got hit in the arm, he would have. I mean, if you look at most car to person accidents, there's bruising, there's fractures. I mean, all over the body. It doesn't just happen at the impact area, because when you get hit and then you land.
Well, no, sorry. Let me rephrase it. I'm not saying that that's my theory. I'm stating that if we're going to hypothesize, because the Commonwealth wants to hypothesize that it had to have been a car, therefore it's Karen Reed. And I'm saying if they're going to hypothesize that a car did this, how does it not make more sense that Brian Higgins, who was also drunk, who is also someone who engaged in a lot of unusual behavior,
correct.
how is the running theory of the Commonwealth not that Brian Higgins clipped him with the plow? I'm not saying that that's the best theory, but that theory fits better than Karen hitting him with a taillight.
Correct. But also remember, Brian Higgins was best friends with Canton Police Chief. And also his placement of where his car was is also up for debate too, because the only people that said his car,
No.
the Nagels,
But
the
he
Nagel,
said,
right. But also Jen McCabe said he was parked in front of the mailbox. But when Nagel came to pick up his sister, he said all three of them testified that there was no Jeep there.
Yeah.
So unless it happened after everybody had already left, which
which is not possible.
I've seen dog bites and I believe they're dog bites, but I didn't see Chloe back in.
Let me grab that picture, because it's not that I think they can't be dog bites. It's just that I don't believe they are, but they could be. They certainly could be. Let me grab it.
Definitely shark bites. New theory.
All right, we are back. Very intimidating being left alone. It's sorry about that. So
No, I was just opining on whether or not they are shark bites.
So let me pull it up. And again, this is a large dog.
Yeah, I see dog bites. I can't. There's not anything on this world that I can imagine. Like, there's not glass. Like, there's nothing in the wounds, and we don't know again because they didn't swab the wounds. They swabbed the shirt.
Yeah, which is weird.
right? And then, and that's another thing. Like, speaking of, how he died, like, he had to have died sitting up, right? Because there's blood on front of his shirt and the back of his shirt, and vomit in his underwear. If he had been hit by Karen, that none of it, vomit would be all over, like, neck at the most, maybe the
Well,
front of his shirt.
let's focus on these being dog bites. So part
Okay.
of my reason for not thinking they're dog bites is, first of all, on the far or to the left-hand side, we see two parallel lines, and then right beside it, we see two more. And do you see the two more that I'm talking about, where there are two at the top and kind of one at the bottom?
Yeah.
Okay. So we get the idea that there is something that is making parallel marks, right? The problem I have is the wound that is on the far right-hand side. That is 4 parallel marks. Dog
Mm-hmm.
bite doesn't leave 4 parallel marks. So that's weird to me. The second thing that makes that's weird to me. The second thing that makes it weird is the dog bite, quote unquote, that we're talking about, which is the second one to the left, where it's 2 scratches